So what we decide with the IMF, or what the agreement that the IMF decides with us, is what will inform what we are going to do with whether it's going to be a debt restructuring or what form of debt restructuring that we should be doing. So in essence,
the Bloomberg reported that the headline was that Ghana set to start debt restructuring for local bonds.
So, but respectfully, as Bloomberg, they have to, they are working as financial journalists, but officially, what informs that decision would have to be an agreement on the DSA with the IMF. And then from there, the government will then have to take steps as to what we need to do. But fundamentally,
there's no position or clarity yet as to whether, like Bryce Simmons and everybody else has mentioned, is going to be just looking at domestic or external debt or both.
No. That will happen next week.
Okay.
Yes, because this whole conversation fundamentally is happening within the IMF framework. And as I said, the IMF will engage the country on our debt sustainability framework.
But what are our options really?
Our options in terms of
what the restructuring will involve.
No, so I think to actually assure the market, I think we not even start this conversation without an extensive engagement with the market, both domestic and external. And I think that any approach that is taken must be an approach that is industry-led. So I think that the final outcome will be a lot of iteration, not something that would be maybe government imposing, like maybe this particular...
No, but you go to the IMF with some strategy, at least with some plan.
No,
so you would know that I'm thinking domestic, I'm thinking external, I'm thinking domestic, this nature of it, or external, that this is how I intend to do it. You don't just go blank.
No, Samson, in practice, you see, as we speak, I can speak for the Ministry of Finance, okay? We have a whole broad framework of debt sustainability. I don't know what example that I can give without giving much away. So, for example, if the way the IMF looks at debt and the things they want to include in the debt, that would even take us to a particular path. In some of them, the ministry or the government may probably have a different position to it. For example, where usually in Ghana, where a lot of the everyday debt analysis focuses on central government debt. And I'm saying this more as a professional, so when you add other debt, I said it from some of the SOEs to it, then your debt framework becomes more elaborated. And then the fund can say that within this particular framework, you have to do A, B, C. And then the adjustment that is then required is what is even going to inform what you are going to do. So, for example, if you want to say, is there going to be a haircut? What should be the approach of any restructuring? These are decisions that you take when you know the extent of the adjustment. And I think Professor Boppin or someone make a good point. Any adjustment, and you also read any adjustment will not only be debt. You see, first, actually, the real issue is that you have to start from your fiscals, your expenditure, your revenue, and then you see it has to be more holistic.
So that was Samson Akligo, who is a director at the Ministry of Finance, answering questions about the options available to us. One thing he makes very clear is our debt sustainability analysis. He talks about the fact that, he cannot give the options currently available because we will be engaging the IMF, which started yesterday, and the Ministry of Finance issued a statement after that meeting. Now, it says, so the statement dated 26th September 2022, that was yesterday, says the Ministry of Finance and the Bank of Ghana have commenced discussions with the IMF for an IMF-supported program. A key prerequisite for a program is confirmation that Ghana's debt is on a sustainable path. This will require a comprehensive debt sustainability analysis, which is currently ongoing. 2, the government of Ghana is putting together a comprehensive post-COVID-19 economic program, which will form the basis for the IMF negotiations. And the program seeks to establish a macro fiscal path that ensures debt sustainability and macroeconomic stability underpinned by key structural reforms and social protection. 3, government negotiations with respect to the IMF-supported program is commencing this week, and we are optimistic about making progress in our discussions. 4, government remains committed and shall continue to actively engage all stakeholders, both public and private, in a clear and transparent manner as we seek to fast-track this process. Issued by the Public Relations Unit of the Ministry of Finance. And so this morning we told you that we're looking at the possible restructuring of our debt. What are the options available to us? And we're privileged to be joined by Professor Elikplimi Komla Agbloyor, who's an associate professor of finance of the University of Ghana Business School. He's also a data scientist, and he's been researching on the options available. In fact, he has a well-researched paper on the options available to us, and he's joined us this morning. Prof, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, and good morning to your cherished listeners.
Great, and thank you very much for making the time to join us this morning. First of all, before we get into any bit of debt restructuring and everything,
Yes.
let me get your views on the statement issued by the Finance Ministry. You've listened to Samson Aklego, who's a director.
Yes.
You've also heard me read the Finance Ministry's statement on the first day of discussions with the IMF.
Yeah.
What sense do you get from the statement issued by the Finance Ministry?
Okay, so I think the statement is in order in terms of indicating that the debt sustainability analysis is currently ongoing, and the outcome of that analysis will inform what the government will do. But I think that they could also have communicated a bit more in terms of details.
What details were you looking forward to in this statement?
Okay, so first of all, what is the government thinking? Okay, and that can provide information to the public and also to investors as to what to expect, especially because it's becoming obvious that the debt may not be sustainable, and in the event that that is the case, what are the options the government is actually considering? I don't think that has been put on the table yet.
And in ensuring debt sustainability,
Yes.
what do you do?
Okay, so there are a number of things that can be done. One is obviously debt restructuring.
Okay.
And when we talk about debt restructuring, is changing, let me say, the nature of the debt such that the country can pay back. And that the restructuring is taking place because, first of all, you cannot pay your debt, or your debt is not sustainable. Okay, so you need to do something to be able to pay back the debt. So basically, that's the debt restructuring.
And is that the only option towards debt sustainability?
It's not. In the medium to long term, we also need to look at increasing our revenues and also reducing, or let me say, prioritizing expenditure.
So in effect, you're saying that
Yeah.
within the short term,
Yes.
the option available to you
Yes.
is considering debt restructuring.
Restructuring, which will give you some space to be able to pay back your debt, and then that gives you also time to be able to put your finances in order.
Okay, so let's break it down now. Let's get to the debt restructuring itself. And let's look at the options available to us within the framework of restructuring our debt.
Okay. So there are 3 main options. One is what we call maturity extension. So let's say Kofi, who is an university student, has purchased, let's say, a 3-year government bond. The government can come back and say that, okay, I can't pay you within 3 years. Let's make it 7 years.
Okay.
Okay, so in that case, they are increasing the maturity of the debt, and that provides them with some space to be able to put their house in order. So that's maturity extension.
And apart from the maturity extension, what other ones are available? I mean, we'll come to the impact of all of
The
it.
impact, yes.
Yes, we'll come to all the impacts,
Yeah.
but so that's maturity extension. Then you talked about other scenarios, other options. What are the other ones?
So the second one is a reduction in the interest rate. So the government says to, let's say, Amma, who is a market woman, that, you know what, we are paying, or let me say a pension fund, you know what, we are paying you 30% currently, but we can't pay if we are to continue to pay 30% for the foreseeable future. So instead of 30%, we'll pay you 20%. Okay, so in that case, the interest payment to the investor is actually reduced. Yeah.
And then the third one?
The third one, which is very uncomfortable, is what we call a haircut. Okay, so the government owes you, or let me say, you invested 1,000 cedis, which is your principal. The government can come and can say that I can't pay you the 1,000 cedis, but rather I'll pay you 500, which is a 50% haircut.
Prof,
Yeah.
I mean, I want to understand the logic behind this. I have given you my money. Now, you promised me interest.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, you can tell me, oh, there's a challenge. So, wow, how about let's reduce your interest?
Yeah.
You can tell me, okay, there's a challenge. So, let's extend the maturity period.
Maturity, yeah.
But to reduce the principal that I give you, if I give you 1,000 cedis and you promised me 30% interest, why on earth think about reducing the 1,000 cedis that I give you?
So it's not an option that we would readily recommend because it has very serious consequences, which we'll discuss later. But then the fact of the matter is that if the government can't pay, they can't pay. And if that becomes the only option available, then investors may have to take a haircut.
Government is a continuum. So how about shifting it and paying it eventually?
So that's a very good question, and I like the question. So what can be done is that, so sometimes what the government can say to investors is that you take a haircut. If things get better, like you said, government is a continuum. If things get better later on, let's say in 3-4 years, we will pay you back some of the money, which is called the recovery value instrument. Okay, so sometimes that recovery is tied, for example, to gold prices, to oil prices, to other commodity prices. Okay, so the investors know that, okay, you're asking us to sacrifice in the short to medium term, but if things get better for Ghana, then we'll get back part of the money you took.
So, Prof, you've talked about maturity extension, reduction in interest rates, and haircuts.
Yes.
Is it related to domestic restructuring, or this is external?
It actually applies to both, but I think that from what we've heard, the government is considering more likely a domestic restructuring.
And is it up to the government to choose an option, especially because we're in talks with IMF? Is it up to us?
Yeah, it is, and they are usually, let me say, what we call priority in terms of repayment. So typically when a sovereign is in trouble, it's easier to restructure domestic debt compared to external debt. Because domestic debt, we can talk to the banks, we can talk to the pension funds, we can even change our local laws to make it easy to do. But structuring external debt is more difficult. Because we have different investors in, let's say, our Euro bonds. They have different aims and objectives. It could even end in litigation in international courts, let's say in New York. Okay, so that is a bit more difficult. And maybe a funny example is that it has, let me say, foreign relations implications. So, for example, in 1902, Venezuela defaulted on its bonds. What Germany, Britain, and Italy did was that they surrounded the country with their warships. They laid siege on Venezuela until they paid the money.
Oh,
Yes.
Wow. That's like
So it can
war.
get that serious. War, yeah. Yeah. But obviously, I don't expect that to happen now. We are not in 1902.
But when was the
yeah.
last time we were faced with a situation like this where we had to play around these three options?
You mean Ghana?
Yes.
I think this is the first time when we are attempting a debt restructuring. Yeah.
Would you not suggest that programs like HIPIC were also playing around with the same concept of restructuring our debts?
It is, but HIPIC was, let me say, more from external sources, and it was more to do with bilateral lenders rather than, in this case, we are talking about commercial lenders because of the Euro bonds.
Okay.
So there's a slight difference, yeah.
Now, there's a lot of focus on local, domestic debt being restructured.
Restructured, yeah.
This then ends up affecting everyone, doesn't it?
Unfortunately, it does.
Talk us through the implications of this on the average citizen.
Okay, so the first point is that the government debt is held by financial institutions. So like the banks, insurance companies, pension funds, mutual funds, etc. If you take the banks, for example, more than 40% of their assets are in treasury bills. So if you touch the T-bills, then it may threaten the solvency of these banks and obviously other financial institutions as well. And once their solvency is strengthened, it also has other implications. For example, if people fear...
hold on a minute, Prof. You know, we're breaking this conversation down. I want everybody to understand. So when you say the banks, their solvency will be threatened by this, what was their solvency that you're talking about? Bring it down for all of us to understand. So, for everybody to understand.
Okay. So basically, let me say their viability will be in question, i.e.
I think
their ability, their ability to more or less meet their obligations, to be able to pay. If you have money in the bank, it can threaten the ability of the bank to pay you back your money.
Okay, that's understandable. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, please keep going. Implications for average citizens.
Okay, so because it can affect the banks, and once the banks are affected, you know, the banks also give loans to businesses and individuals. So if the banks are in a shaky financial position, what it means is that they will also hoard liquidity. What I mean by that is that instead of giving loans, they will hold on to their money instead of lending. And that would then affect businesses, individuals, and that can translate into reducing the growth of the economy.
Okay.
So through that channel, it can affect individuals, it can affect businesses. It could lead to what we call a bank run. Like I said earlier, if people are not very confident in the banks, they begin to withdraw their funding from the banks. And that has adverse implications for businesses as well.
Now, we obviously don't want to create a bank run. The government doesn't want that. We don't want that. Nobody wants that. So what would government have to do if indeed they've got their eye on debt restructuring for domestic debt?
Yes.
What would they have to do to ensure that this does not result in the outcomes that you've described?
So there are a number of things. One is, I think they should come out with what we call an indicative restructuring scenario, which tells investors what the government will want to do when it comes to the debt restructuring. Are they going to ask for a maturity extension? Are they going to ask for a reduction in interest rates? Are they going to ask for a haircut? Okay. And if so, how much of the debt is going to be restructured? So that's the first thing that I think they need to do. They also need to tell the market the results of their stress testing to see the impact of the restructuring on the economy. Because you don't just restructure, you should look at, okay, if I restructure and I touch the banks, their assets, what is going to happen to the banking system? If I touch the pension funds, what's going to happen to people's pensions? If I touch insurance companies, what's going to be the effect on insurance companies? And consequently, how would that affect the economy? Okay, so we call that a stress test, which shows the impact of what they're going to do on the economy. Right. And if it's obvious that the impact will not be severe, I think that can also allay the fears of the general public and investors as well.
You know, Prof, you started by talking about the impact. You talked about impact for the financial sector, and you were running it by, But I want us to take it one after the other.
After the other, yeah.
So I want to start first of all, even from the government and the economy as a whole. Okay. If we decide to engage in a debt restructuring, what does it mean? How would it impact the Ghanaian economy?
Okay.
In totality. Then we would come down to even the private sector, corporate entities. And then we'll come down to us, the individuals. So let's look at the Ghanaian economy, the government, if government opts to do this, what will be the impact on government itself, on its balance sheet?
Okay, so when you're doing restructuring, there are costs and benefits.
Okay.
So the costs include a potential damage of the government's reputation. Yes, because people see treasury instruments, including treasury bills, treasury bonds, as basically risk-free. So once you threaten to default or there's a possibility of default, that can really affect the market psychology in terms of the fact that now people even fear to put their money into treasury instruments. So there's that potential damage in the government's reputation.
Okay.
And once you default, even on, or you restructure, even on domestic debt, it can put fear into the external holders of our debt because they know, okay, if things get bad, we are next.
Exactly. So talking about government reputation, because we also know that these treasury bills and bonds are a major source of financing for our deficits, for instance. So if that happens, how would that affect government's ability to raise the necessary revenue for the funding of its budget?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So first of all, I think that in any potential restructuring, they should exclude treasury bills, exactly for the reasons that you have stated. Other than that, if people start withdrawing their money from treasury bills, and if people refuse to buy subsequent issues of treasury bills, that can cripple the government. So I think there should be a clear message that treasury bills will be excluded, so that the short-term financing of the government is not affected.
So if I'm to get you clearly, this could even affect government's ability to raise the needed funds for its obligations this year.
It can, especially if people are so fearful that they refuse to buy new issues of T-bills, or they begin to liquidate already existing bills that they hold.
Now, there's something that we have to pay attention to. This is not happening in isolation. This debt restructuring conversation is in the context of an IMF program. So what role does the presence of the IMF play in this proposed project of government? How does the IMF's presence affect whatever government decides to do?
Okay, so that's also a very good question. Thank you. The IMF's role is that we are considering an IMF program, and we are more or less requesting that the IMF lends to us. And as part of the IMF's own policies, they do not lend to governments whose debt are not sustainable. So first of all, that means that we need to put ourselves in a position where our debt is sustainable. Then we may be able to access funding from the IMF. So that's the link between the IMF and the potential restructuring that is going to take place. Because you don't want to throw, how did they even say, is it good money after bad money? The IMF doesn't want to do that. And that is why they want to ensure that, first of all, your debt is sustainable before they can give you money or lending.
Okay, I just wanted to say, when you say sustainability again, you're talking about our ability to pay our debts.
Yes, our ability
as a
to
country.
pay as a country.
So before they even help you, they want to be sure that you are able to pay your existing debts.
Exactly.
Before they give you more money as loan.
Yes. Other than that, their own money will also be at risk. Yes.
Great. So so you've talked about the government, but let's look at corporate Ghana, the private sector. How is this going to affect them?
Okay, so they also hold government instruments. Okay, so one, if they are also asked to, for example, take a haircut, that can affect their own sustainability. So that's one way in which corporates can be affected. If there's also another channel, if the government is viewed to be riskier, okay, it could lead to an increase in the cost of borrowing for the government, and that would then translate into an increase in the cost of borrowing for businesses. Because typically, businesses pay a rate higher than the government. Because we see government as risk-free, typically in any economy, the government rate is the lowest. And then individuals and businesses pay a little bit above the government rate. So if the government's risk is perceived to be increasing, and the rates on these instruments go up, it's also going to increase the cost of borrowing for businesses as well.
Okay. I want us to go back to what I'm picturing. I'm sure the audience is also picturing it as a decision tree.
Yeah.
So government has to decide, are we going to do debt restructuring or not?
Yeah.
Let's assume they say we are going to do debt restructuring. At that point, they have three options.
Yes.
They can either, one, extend maturities.
Yes.
Two, reduce interest rates. Or three, take a haircut on the principal.
On the principal, yes.
All right. I want us to go through each of them.
Okay.
So if we take option one, extending maturities, talk us through the pros and cons of option one, extending maturities.
Okay, so option one, I think, is probably the best and the easiest for investors to swallow. Okay, so the pros is that it's less damaging to investors. The consequences are also less. So typically when you talk about maturity extension, even though it's part of debt restructuring, it's more like we call it reprofiling the debt. So it's not a severe form of restructuring. So, okay, I'm to pay you in 5 years, but let's make it 10 years. So give me I'm to pay you in 2 years. Give me, let's say, 3 years extension. So that gives the government space, and also investors there know that they are not actually going to lose any money. It's just that they'll be paid in a longer period, but they're not actually going to lose any money. So it's let me say, the most preferred of the three options, in my opinion.
Okay.
And the article that we wrote at TESAH Capital, our recommendation is actually that we should go for a maturity extension and not a reduction in interest rates or haircuts to investors.
Okay. Yes. Still, I want us to work through each of them. So even with this preferred option of maturity extension, what's the downside?
The downside is that it doesn't guarantee that you'll be paid anyway. The guy says, okay, I'll pay you 3 years, let's make it 7 years. There's no guarantee that even in the 7 years they'll be able to pay you. So that still exposes investors to risk.
Okay.
Because you restructure first and you come again and say, okay, let's extend again because I still can't pay.
Yeah.
So that risk is still there for investors.
Okay. Second option is to reduce the interest rate. Pros and cons.
Okay, so I don't think it's very palatable for investors in the sense that the interest rate they are lending to government now is based on the risks they perceive that the government is carrying. Okay, so I'm lending to you at 30%, let's say, for now, based on your risk, based on inflation, etc. And even currently, these rates are below the inflation rate. Okay, inflation was 33.9%. Okay, so if you are giving me 30%, which it doesn't even compensate me for inflation, and you are coming back to ask for a reduction, that's serious. So even currently, investors probably are not earning sufficient returns to compensate them for the risks they are taking on by buying government instruments. So if you reduce it further, that is not sometimes very fair. And again, the cash flows of, let's say, a bank, okay, they've looked at the rates they are earning on the, let's say, Treasury Bonds. It's part of their cash flow forecast. And that is also part of what they are going to use to pay their obligations. So if you reduce it, it can have very serious and negative consequences for them. Yeah.
Is there a plus side?
Not really. The only plus will be that it helps to make the debt sustainable for the government.
Right.
Because if things are so bad that we have to do a reduction in interest rates, it means that if it's not done, there will be a default. We cannot pay the debt. And therefore, it's like, even though it's not a very good option, investors may have to settle for it. Other than that, they may not even get anything at all.
And at the moment, servicing of interest alone on our debts is humongous, especially external debts. It's quite significant at the moment. So yes, there would be a good advantage to the government, but not to the creditors.
Yes.
All right.
Because they are now actually losing money.
Yeah. Option 3, the big one. The one you don't like at all.
Yeah, the one I don't like at all. The haircut is okay. Government says I owe you 1,000 cedis. I'll pay you 500. Or in some cases, sometimes it's even 30%. I'll pay you 300. So depending on the extent of the problem, the haircut could be anything from 30% to about 70%. Yeah, investors could lose as much. And for countries like Venezuela and co, sometimes Russia, it's been about 30%. So investors get back only 30% of their money, and the haircut is about 70%.
Wow.
Is that money that will be eventually paid back to you?
No. Once the haircut is done, it means that money has been lost. You will not be paid again.
So your only mistake then would be saving, because you invested. Because it's not. It won't be because you did anything wrong.
You mean as an investor?
As an investor.
Yes.
Well, the option of also not investing at all is not the best. Maybe how I'll answer your question is that when you are investing, you need to diversify your portfolio. So more or less, don't put everything in one basket.
Yeah, but Prof, a lot of the times what we do with investment is that we consider government bonds as risk-free.
As risk-free.
So when we're doing the portfolio management, we say, oh, government is risk-free. We decide a percentage. Let's put it at government. Because at least that one you expect government to pay. So if the risk-free part is creating problems, how about the other ones?
Yeah, that's true, and that's a fear, because especially after the financial sector cleanup, okay, we saw that people invested with banks, they got their hands bent, even institutions, okay, invested because they were chasing higher returns. Those times 2017, about government returns weren't very high, but if you had gone to invest in, let's say, a microfinance company or a savings and loans company, you could actually earn a bit more, and investors got their hands bent, including corporations and institutions. And what a lot of the institutions then began to do, I want to mention institutions, that they then began to withdraw money from, let's say, the banks, those that were perceived not to be safe, microfinance, and they put their money in government instruments, knowing that even though the returns were not that high, it's not very likely that the government will not pay them back. Exactly. So if that is also becoming a problem, then that may pose a challenge for even the psyche of investors. It's like you don't even know where to invest again. Yeah.
And talking about the psyche of investors,
Yeah.
let's look at the investor right now, and let's look at individuals. We're talking about how it's going to affect the economy, how it's going to affect corporate. But let's look at us, the individuals, those who have invested in it, and even let's look at it from the point of view also of the corporates, so the private sector.
Okay.
If they go through all these challenges, how is that going to be transferred to us? And if we are also going to go through these challenges, how does that impact us?
Okay, so first of all, for individuals, we would strongly recommend that the government does not do an extension. So they should just exclude individuals from this process, because it could create serious consequences. Okay, if people begin to lose their investments, it could create a lot of financial challenges for households, and that could even lead to a lot of unrest, labor unrest and unrest in the streets. So we would strongly recommend that the government doesn't touch individual investors. So that should be excluded from the restructuring process. They should focus on institutions, particularly possibly financial institutions and not corporate institutions.
But talking about the financial institutions, you've talked about how it could even affect, the banks, for instance. You've talked about even, the private sector and these institutions that have also, acquired some of these, and how it could affect them. You've talked about. So, on the whole, if we go that way, wouldn't that also be affecting the financial sector and by extension the economy and the individuals?
It can, but I think it can be done if well managed. And let me explain how it can be done. So if you look at, so like we mentioned, banks have short-term obligations, let me put it that way. People can come for their money any day, anytime. Okay, so because of that, for banks, you don't want to do a lot of maturity extension. We talked about insurance companies and the different types like life insurance and non-life. Non-life has shorter term obligations compared to life. So if you want to extend, you have more room to extend for life insurance companies. If you take mutual funds, okay, we have money market mutual funds. They buy short-term things like T-bills. So they probably you should exclude or consider a very short-term extension. You also have what we call fixed income funds. They buy longer-term instruments like 5-year bonds, 7-year bond, 15-year bond. So you have a bit more room to extend for fixed income funds. Then for pension funds, they are holding people's pensions. Sometimes some people retire in 30 years, 40 years. So they have a longer term or they have longer obligations. And therefore for pension funds, it's maybe easier to extend the maturity for pension funds. So depending on the design, you can still do it for the financial sector without creating negative consequences. And one of the reasons, how do I put it? There's some sort of co-insurance effect between the government and financial institutions.
When you say co-insurance, what do you mean?
Okay, so what I mean is that when the financial sector is in trouble, there's an unwritten rule that the government will come in and bail them. And actually, that's what we saw in 2017. Okay, anytime
Yes,
that
government in trouble.
so yes, here is government in trouble. So
Who's going to bail the government?
so the financial sector may have to, in the short term, adjust to help bail out the government so that the government is more sustainable in the long term. Then the government can also come back and bail the financial sector if need be in the future. So that's the co-insurance. Typically, the insurance is more from the government side to the financial sector. But here's the case that the financial sector may have to adjust a bit to create more sustainability for the government. And I'm saying so because if you listen to the vice president, one of the reasons he gave for where we are now is the financial sector cleanup, contributing to the situation that the government faces currently.
All right, listen. This is the Super Morning Show on Joy 99.7 FM. When we come back, we're going to go into some very important basic questions. So, how does all this affect you and your money in the bank? These three options that are before the government, if they decide to go the way of debt restructuring, how does each option affect you, your bank balance? All right, and also, is it possible to completely avoid debt restructuring? That's the first decision to be made on our decision tree. Is it possible for government to not take the option of debt restructuring? What would be the alternatives? How else can government clean up the books? When we come back.
guidance on issues of governmental policy and regulatory framework. GIPCON 2022 will witness a convergence of regulators and downstream industry stakeholders from across the West African sub-region and beyond. It is a unique occasion to connect with many specialists in the downstream petroleum industry from all over the world. For registration, participation, opportunities for exhibition and sponsorship, kindly visit gipcon.com.
Hey, Atongo, if you that long time,
Postman, it be me, oh, look. I go for training for abroad, though. Now I get a doctorate for psychology. I go for training for some fresh Interplast pipe.
Hey, Atongo Bidato, you always have something new from Interplast.
See this pipe be very durable and correct. You fit say it be very potent. Look, like it be medicines, if it could a bit Viagra serve. I could do press conference soon, you know. I could tell the whole world how my new pipes go fit stop global warming. It be go fit face the desert heat, Eskimo cold, even the Swiss canal.
Atongo, it no be global warning, it be warming.
I mean, all it be the global now, whether warning or warming. See, it be the press conference where you will see why everybody for use PVC and HDPE pipes from Interplast. Interplast pipes be the best pipes. Very soon, Akosumbo and Boy themselves. Look, they don't go wait for rain because I got delayed HDPE pipes from the Red Sea and even global warning.
Hey, Atongo Bidato, international plumber with international pipes.
Interplast, wherever you are, we make sure water reaches you, even space.
Charlie, so it's actually raining and we can't hear any sound. As for this, your house, when it's raining, no sound. When the sun is up, the interior is cool. What roof are you using?
They use Ico roofing shingles from Interface Limited. Long lasting and beautiful.
Ico roofing shingles. We all for move to Interface and get this Ico roofing shingles.
Interface Limited is the leading supplier and installer of finishing input materials for the building and construction industry in Ghana. Call us on 0274 999999 or visit our website at
www.interfacelimited.net. Facebook Interface Limited GH. Instagram interface.limited.
Fortune rice, it needs just a little water. The green stone stick and the aroma and taste are delicious. Fortune rice, always on point, just like mom.
Now introducing Fortune Amoah, your tasty Ghana rice for all your rice meals.
This advert is FDA approved.
Just like mom.
Football's greatest season is here, and DSTV is the stadium with all the action. Enjoy every single match from the FIFA World Cup, Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, the UEFA Europa League, and the UEFA Champions League. The greatest football from the greatest leagues around the world. Ronaldo, Haaland, Messi, Salah, Afena-Gyan, and Benzema. All week, every week. Get your decoder today for just 169 Ghana cedis and upgrade to Compact and be part of sport's greatest stadium only on DSTV. DSTV, it's your moment.
This is your last chance to make that dream travel you have been waiting for come true. So take that step with Latina Travels and Tours and join the business tour in Turkey and leisure in Dubai for all your business and leisure needs from the 1st to the 8th of November 2022. Package starts from $2,500 and includes visa, flight, accommodation, 3-meal plan, transfer and tours. To register, contact Latina Travel on 0244 260 789 or call Gifty on 0270-302-245 or visit the Sunny TV premises or Latina Travel at the Elisa Hotel, North Ridge, Accra. This advert is sponsored by Joy FM, Latina Travel, Sunny TV, Sunny FM, and AGI.
Coffee in your cup and joy on the set. The Super Morning Show is always the best. On
Komla Agbloyor, who is an associate professor of finance at the University of Ghana Business School. So we're going to learn a bit more. We're going to bring it home and make it relevant to you, your bank account right now, your bank balance right now. How does all this affect or impact it? In just a moment. Before that, have you registered your Surfline numbers yet? In line with National Communications Authority's directive to get all SIM cards re-registered, Surfline has demarcated special registration points close to your community to help you register your MiFis and routers. You can also visit any Surfline shop near you to register with your Ghana card. Remember, no registration, no service. Register your Surfline numbers today to avoid disconnection. Surfline, better together.
And do you want a British degree at a fraction of the cost? Do you want a vibrant student experience in a community that equips you with useful employability skills, taking you one step closer to the career of your dreams? Well, enjoy all these and more, plus up to 50% scholarship for your degree at Lancaster University, Ghana. Be taught by the finest faculty trained to UK standards at our ultra-modern campus. For more information, visit lancaster.edu.gh. You can also contact Lancaster University via email at admissions@lancaster.edu.gh or call Lancaster University on 020-960-7008. Lancaster University, Ghana, the only British university campus in West Africa.
And the Minerals Income Investment Fund, MIIF, the state entity mandated to receive and manage mineral royalties, amongst other functions, per the Minerals Income Investment Act 2018. Act 978 wishes to remind all licensed and active quarry operators, salt mining operators, limestone mining operators, and sand winners to pay their overdue royalties into the designated MIIF account at the Bank of Ghana or through ghana.gov.gh to avoid sanctions. Separately, all returns must be filed at the nearest Ghana Revenue Authority office and filed with the Finance Department of MIIF or addressed to MIIF or via email at finance@miif.gov.gh. Operators who have not paid mineral royalties from 2021 and between January 2022 and June 2022 are also hereby notified to fulfill this statutory obligation in order to avoid any business inconvenience. MIIF has commenced its nationwide interagency operation to ensure all mining operators within the jurisdiction comply and adhere to the Minerals Income Investment Act 2018, Act 978 to the letter. For further information, kindly contact MIIF via nana.tando@miif.gov.gh or call 0201855660 or 0201855612 or 0201855564. Kindly visit miif.gov.gh to learn more about the activities of the Mineral Income Investment Fund and its triple statutory mandate of managing the equity stake of Ghana in all mining companies, receiving royalties on behalf of the state and investing the royalties to guarantee the future wealth of Ghanaians. Our royalties are heritage.
Now, Oktoberfest is here again. You will like this one, Churchill. Ghana's premier five-star hotel, Labadi Beach Hotel, brings you another exciting edition of the biggest beer festival in the world, Oktoberfest. Performing live is the Bayern Boys Band from Germany. Catch all the fun with German traditional food and beer at the plush Labadi Beach Hotel from the 7th to the 9th of October 2022. Do you know what sauerkraut is?
No, what is that?
You can Google it. Very nice. All right. So for inquiries and reservations, call.
I'm with the masses. So.
You are with. Well, it's German in origin. So.
Okay. We're always in Ghana.
Well, Oktoberfest is in Ghana now. So Google sauerkraut. All right. Please call 0302-772-501 or 05-444-31213. To learn more. Come and let's party at Oktoberfest 2022.
And here's an easy way to shop for books and stationery. Your number one supplier of quality office essentials, equipment, and furniture at affordable prices has introduced an online store for your shopping convenience. KingdomStoreOnline.com is the website. Just log on, start shopping, and Kingdom Books will arrange delivery to your homes and offices within reasonable time. They offer free delivery within Accra and Tema. They accept payment via Momo across all networks. Terms and conditions apply. apply. At Kingdom, quality and affordability are their hallmark.
And are you planning to study in the UK or Ireland in 2023? It is time to make progress with your study abroad journey. Study abroad is much easier with the right information, and that is why Study Worldwide Intake Ghana was made just for you. Meet and chat with over 50 top UK and Irish universities. This event is happening in Accra on Tuesday, the 18th of October 2022 at the Kempinski Gold Coast Hotel. From 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and in Kumasi on Wednesday 19th October at Golden Beam Hotel from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. It is free. Register now on intake.education/joyfm. That's intake.education/joyfm or call 0596081424.
All right. Okay. So, conversations have begun about restructuring government debt as part of our IMF program. Now, it is domestic debt that is being mentioned in this vein. So the question is, how does that affect the average Ghanaian? Is something going to happen to your bank account, your bank balance, your savings, your investments? Is something going to happen to it? Let's break it down with our guests and get to the bottom of it. Now, Prof, I think first of all, maybe in answering that question of what happens to my bank account, maybe we should walk through some terms and explain them. Okay, we've used certain terms: bonds, treasury bills. What exactly is a bond? What is a treasury bill? A typical Ghanaian who has a bank account at Zenith Bank or Fidelity Bank or ABSA or any of the banks in Ghana. What should they? How does any of this affect them?
Okay. So first of all, I'll talk about savings. Okay. So savings is when you put, for example, your money in your bank account. Let's say a current account or a typical savings account. Okay. So that's your money in the bank. The discussion we are having currently does not relate to your money in the bank. So you have one savings. Then you also have what we call, some investors may have purchased what we call fixed deposits. Okay, so these are issued by the banks. More or less, the bank is borrowing from you at a given interest rate. So for example, you can give your money to EcoBank or ABSA or GT Bank or GCB, and they say, we'll pay you 20% annualized for, let's say, 3 months. Okay, so the discussion we're having currently is also not about a bank's fixed deposits or when investors have given their money to a bank in the form of a loan. Okay, then you have treasury bills. Treasury bills are actually issued by the government. So more or less the government is borrowing, and it's not, let me say, peculiar to Ghana. Okay, governments across the world issue treasury bills. They borrow to fund their expenditure. Treasury bills are short-term borrowing by the government. So in Ghana, the government borrows for 91 days, which is 3 months. It also borrows for 182 days, which is 6 months. And then it also borrows for 364 days. So those are the 3 main treasury bills we have in Ghana. So 3 months, 6 months, and then 1 year. Okay, so investors can invest in T-bills for either 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year. So those are short-term borrowings by the government. Then you have what we call treasury bonds. Treasury bonds is still, so it's like T-bills. The government is still borrowing, but it's longer term. And in Ghana, we have a 3-year bond, 5-year bond, 7-year bond, 10-year bond, 15-year bond, and I believe we also now have a 20-year bond. So these are long-term borrowings by the government, where the government takes your money. So more or less, the government takes your money, promises to pay you back your money in the future. And then for bonds, what typically happens is that every 6 months they pay you interest. So if you buy a government bond, every 6 months they pay you some interest. So that's how the bonds work.
Okay. So we've made it clear. If you have your savings in your bank account, this conversation has nothing to do.
No.
However, if indeed government goes with some of these options, like perhaps the haircut or the reduction of interest, it can have an effect on your average bank customer, can't it?
Yes, it can.
Please walk us through that.
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, I think that investors in T-bills should not worry that much, because typically when countries do restructuring, they exclude treasury bills. It's normal. So I don't expect T-bills to be affected. Now, so if you're holding T-bills, you shouldn't worry that much. The concern may be with if you're holding a bond. But even in that case, our expectation is that the government would exclude individuals from this process. And if that is the case, then individuals will not bear any losses on their investments. And if the restructuring is well done, then it won't affect the ability of banks to pay their customers or depositors. And therefore, that should also cause panic in the financial sector.
Now, we've neatly classified the debt into domestic and foreign.
Yeah.
But as you know, so many of the banks in Ghana are foreign.
Okay.
So when we talk about restructuring domestic debt, is there still the possibility of some of the potential outcomes of restructuring foreign debt? Are some of those risks built in to restructuring local domestic debt as well?
Yes, they actually are. And the concern there will be that even for the domestic debt, and actually that's the truth, a lot of it or majority of it is actually held by foreign investors. So even though it's classified as domestic, you still have foreigners holding government bonds, domestic government bonds, not the Euro bonds. So even though it's domestic, there may still be foreign, there actually are foreign investors holding some of the domestic bonds as well. And that has implications on how a restructuring can be done. And at TESAH Capital, our thinking is that, well, if it has to be done, it has to be done. But you should also consider, if possible, we should exclude foreign holders of domestic bonds. Because if they are fearful and they refuse to finance or to buy future bonds, that can have consequences for the ability of the government to actually run. And it could also lead to what we call capital flow reversals, in the sense that those who are already here, they'll begin to sell their investments, buy dollars, and go out. And the implication of that is that if they are beginning to buy dollars to exit, it's even going to create more problems for the city. Because they can't go out with cedis, they have to go out with dollars. And that will put pressure on the dollar to go up. And that can have adverse effects on the local currency.
Right. Now, what are the broader effects of a debt restructuring, domestic debt restructuring on the economy? What will it do to our currency? What will it do to inflation? What will it do to all the other macroeconomic indicators that we are already keeping very, very close eyes on?
Yeah. If it's well done, it can actually lead to, let me say, good outcomes. Okay. If it's well done and government debt is not believed to be sustainable, then the cost of borrowing can come down. And that also can affect so cost of borrowing not just for the government, but for businesses and individuals as well. So if it's well done, it can have positive consequences on the economy. So yes, there are positive consequences for actually doing a debt restructuring, because at this point, it's becoming, the IMF hasn't come out with the debt sustainability analysis yet. The last time they did it was in 2021. Then they said the debt was sustainable. But now, given how things have turned out, given the way interest rates have increased, okay, the results are not out yet, but it's becoming apparent that the debt may not be sustainable. And therefore, a restructuring has to be done.
Great. Prof, so we've talked about everything, the options available to us and the impacts. But there's a school of thought that still insists how to avoid this. They have said there should be a way around it. Is there a way not to do this? How do we avoid a debt restructuring?
Okay, I think there may still be options. So we could probably borrow a bit more from the African Development Bank if they are willing to lend to us. That, and the African Development Bank may not be too fearful because they have what we call preferred creditor status. Typically, when a country is in trouble and they cannot pay, it doesn't affect IMF. It doesn't affect World Bank. It only affects, let's say, if the ADB is to lend to us, it wouldn't affect them. So one option is to probably borrow from the ADB. I know we went for some loan from them already. Or maybe friendly countries who can support us. That is an option.
Yeah. So apart from borrowing, how about increasing our revenue?
I think we have tried that. Especially we need to solve the problems in the short term. So the government sought to increase revenue by the introduction of the e-levy, which so far hasn't worked. And I think I've said previously that I think that the design of the e-levy was part of the reasons it didn't work. And I think that was the main revenue measure that the government was hoping would prevent us from getting into this situation. And unfortunately, it didn't work. So revenue measures at this point, I don't think there's a lot of room for that. We have also tried to cut expenditure already.
Yes, but talking about cutting down expenditure, there's another school of thought. Let me get your view on this. That says maybe we didn't do that well.
Yeah.
Because part of our problem is procurement related. And in cutting down expenditure, we didn't cut down the number of appointees.
Yeah.
And so we're still spending more. How about we decide we're cutting down on the number of appointees? And that in itself reduces the amount of procurement that these persons would engage in. And that would, by extension, reduce the corruption and the irregularities that have been costing us billions of Ghana cedis.
That's very true. It can be done. And I think it should be done, especially in the medium to long term. There's a fundamental issue as to why we are where we are now. And it has colonial origins. Okay, so let me explain. If you look at a country like Ghana, okay, when the Europeans came here, they put in place what we call extractive institutions. Okay, and the reason was that they didn't intend to actually live here for long or to actually stay here for a number of reasons. One, when they came to Ghana, there was malaria, 1700s, 1800s. They were dying a lot from malaria. So West Africa wasn't very conducive for them. Now, if you compare that to South Africa or Southern Africa, where the weather is similar to Europe, where they didn't have a lot of problems with malaria, you will see that Southern Africa was more developed than West Africa, for example.
Yeah.
So that is what we call the colonial origins of the problems we are facing currently. When the white man came to Ghana, if they were building you a railroad, it wasn't because they thought you deserved a railroad. It was because they wanted to, so they'll put it in, let's say, somewhere they can take, let's say, timber. So you will notice that the infrastructure is typically linked to a port.
Yeah.
Okay, so they'll just take the resources, take it to the port, and it's exported out. Okay, so because of the design of that system, and that is the problem we are facing now, and that system also promotes corruption. Okay, because our elected officials know that to a large extent, they are not accountable. A lot of the state resources are actually siphoned, like you said. And if we're able to manage that, we wouldn't find ourselves in the situation in which we are now.
Great. So we're still talking about debt restructuring, the options available to us. You said the best option is to extend maturity period. And even as we extend that, you still believe that there is a way we can avoid particularly the, cut on interest and the cut on principal. And
I don't know the volume of restructuring that would have to be done, but as much as possible, I think we should avoid that.
All right, well, if you just joined us, we've been talking to Professor Elikplimi Komla Agbloyor. He's an associate professor at the Department of Finance at the University of Ghana Business School. The whole conversation has been about debt restructuring and whether or not we should do it, first of all. Secondly, if we do go that way, what are the implications? We've gone down every possible rabbit hole on this one to figure out what the implications would be and what the impact would be on you, on your economy, on your business, on your bank account. And it's been quite enlightening. I suppose that at this point, we are now fully equipped to hear what the government decides to do and analyze it because we have all the information. For that, we are so grateful to you, Professor Elikplimi Komla Agbloyor, Associate Professor in Finance, University of Ghana Business School. All right, should we take some messages?
Yes, we can go to Twitter now at Dumevi _ promises it's unacceptable for government to borrow for consumption and later call for debt restructuring. It's the laziest and weakest approach to economic recovery. Government must cut down on necessary expenditure and focus on domestication with the hashtag Joy SMS. Opipihene Kent says it's needless, especially now that the state is obviously battling on debt restructuring and a serious noise of economic hardship in the system. Perry Gringo says, I think the Ministry of Finance has hinted a haircut. We should just get ready. And the last one is from Adni Cash. The request for this government to organize a century-like forum to elicit ideas on the management of the economy fell on deaf ears. Clearly, the economy is in tatters and must be rescued. Those are your thoughts on Twitter.
All right. Listen, we're going to take some messages from our partners in just a moment. But first, if you're wondering whose birthday it is, it's yours actually. And MTN is saying that because it's your special day. You deserve great birthday gifts, all on them. Now, on your birthday, you get up to 3 hours of free talk time and 25 free text messages to call and text all of your friends and family on MTN. That's not all. You also stand a chance of getting birthday cakes and e-vouchers to grab your own birthday gifts at some of your favorite shops and supermarkets. So you know where all the birthday fun day. Join the biggest family in Ghana and let's chill on your special day. Kind courtesy, MTN. Please note all terms and conditions apply.
And are you an accomplished leader or an emerging leader and desire to see great leadership on the continent? Then join the Live to Lead conference for a full-day leadership event on Friday, October 7. Live to Lead is organized by the John Maxwell Company, live from Atlanta, Georgia, and simulcast around the globe. Theme, Leading with Integrity for the Common Good, and is delivered by world-class speakers. Speaking this year are John C. Maxwell, world-acclaimed #1 leadership expert and best-selling author, Patrick Ewuah, President of Ashesi University, Patricia Obonai, CEO of Vodafone Ghana, Uncle Ibo White, renowned playwright, Gwyneth Addo, who's CEO of the Hair Center, and Madam Kathleen Addy, chairperson of NCCE. Other international speakers are like Patrick Lencioni and more. Date is Friday, October 7, 2022. Venue is virtual on Leader Pass platform. Rate only 799 Ghana cedis. Call us on 0546 665826 or 0244 012 450. Or visit livetoleadghana.com for more information. Partners: Go Fields, Joy FM, Village of Hope, Global Share Alliance, EcoBank, Stanbic Bank, KPMG, Hollard, APSA, and UBA. Live to Lead is brought to you in Ghana by CTL Africa, Yalpebi Team, and SJA Consult.
All right then. So as a climax to its Climate Week commemoration, the European Union, in partnership with the government of Ghana, brings you a roundtable discussion on how can we adapt agriculture to climate change in Ghana. This is happening on Tuesday, 27th of September 2022 at the Center for Climate Change and Sustainable Development Studies, University of Ghana, Legon. The opening statement will be delivered by the ambassador of the delegation of the European Union to Ghana, Irshad Razali, and the ambassador of the Federal Republic of Germany to Ghana, Daniel Kroll. Now, here are the people on the panel. Senior Agricultural Officer, Ministry of Food and Agriculture, Ahmed Gibrila. Senior Research Fellow and CCSD Program Coordinator and Sustainability Studies, Dr. Yao Ajiman Boafu. Agricultural Extension Agent, Nafisa Mahama. Agricultural Development Programs Assistant at Camfed Ghana, Mami Grace Ifwa Amponsa. It's live on your Super Hits Radio Joy 99.7 FM at 4:15 p.m. Be part of the live conversation via all social media platforms and share your comments and questions. Remember, it's the 27th of September 2022. Make a date with us.
Now, are you worried about acquiring litigation-free land in Kumasi? Are you thinking about how to obtain exquisite and outstanding accessories to make your home unique? You want to buy a house? Where do you live? Do you want quality but affordable roofing sheets, blocks, granite, pavement blocks, marbles, paint, polytanks, home security, and anything construction? Worry no more, because your superstation, Love 99.5 FM, is here again with a Kumasi edition of the Habitat Fair 2022, which brings together finance houses, construction firms, real estate developers, dealers in furnishing, and many more. This event is slated for Friday the 30th of September to Sunday the 2nd of October 2022 from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. each day. Habitat Fair 2022 is brought to you by your superstation Love 99.5 FM and supported by Republic Bank PLC. We are the one for you. DBS Industries, your roofing, concrete and steel solutions. With Deluxe, we protect what matters most. Superlog, you deserve the best city park. Efie Nifie, Tesprom Estate Limited, we build your home in 1 year and you pay in 15 years. Syntex, a year strong, a year tough. And Norax, water purification made easy. Love FM Habitat Fair, home ownership, where you live, matters.
Before we wrap up on this one, just got a quick message from Isaac. Isaac says, kindly ask Prof this question for me. When banks raise funds from customers by way of fixed deposits, they reinvest the excess liquidity in instruments like bonds, treasury bills, etc. So a bank may hold bonds directly but on behalf of customers. Therefore, if a bank does not receive its funds, won't it create liquidity crisis just like we had in 2017 during the collapse of the banks?
Yes, Prof.
Yes. Yes, that's possible. Yeah, because when the banks take our funds in the form of fixed deposits, they invest it in assets like loans and also treasury instruments. And we know that about 40% of the banking sector's assets are actually invested in treasury instruments. So yes, as we explained earlier, there's a potential that if the government doesn't pay everything to the banks, it can affect the banks and consequently affect their ability to pay depositors.
Right.
Yeah.
Charlie, I get better, sir. All right. Now, of course, now that we're all, educated, we can enter that conversation about what options government should take. And that will be the next step of our conversation. We'll take some messages now from our partners. More on the Super Morning Show after these.
Yes. Ghana's premier five-star hotel, Labadi Beach Hotel, brings you another exciting edition of the biggest beer festival in the world. October 1st, 2022. Performing live is the Bayern Boys Band from Germany. Catch all the fun with German traditional food and beer at the plush Labadi Beach Hotel from the 7th to the 9th of October 2022. For reservations and enquiries, call 0302-772-501 or 054-443-1213. Oktoberfest Beer Festival. Come, let's party.
Football kukuta mene ni ede ba ofie. Go biada romanti. Jojo wo ofie na je osi TV se. Go TV the leagues and the cup competitions e bonson. Ebre wo Super Sports so. Hwesenia Premier League, Serie A, La Liga, Europa, and the FA Cup nyina do koso wo den. Train na the FIFA World Cup no so be pi wo so. Better football day here. Je wo Go TV decoder. 89 Ghana cedis per. Na hwe football kukuta season for free. Go TV. Love it.
Don't praise, yeah.
You know the numbers. Give us a call. 0302 216 541 055 1111 997. Where do you weigh in on this whole debate about debt restructuring? Should government go to that? Are there other alternatives? If government is going to go for debt restructuring, what do you expect to happen to the local financial markets? What do you think should be the approach of government to ensure that this results in a positive outcome for our economy as we seek to come out of quite a big hole that many countries of the world are currently in? So listen, let's take a few calls. Let's hear from you. I want to know what your questions are, what your thoughts are, what your views are on the possibility of debt restructuring as part of this IMF program. 0302 216 541 055 1111 997. Claude is in Tema. Hi, Claude. It's good to have you back.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Yes. You know, my issue is not about the restructuring of the debt, but after that has been done, how are we able to recover, to be able to get resources, not to go back into debt? You know, we look at Galamsey. Where is the gold money going to? The rosewood money, where is it going to? The oil money, how is it being managed? I think that is the area the government has to look at and be able to be accountable to us as citizens. Otherwise, they will give us the loan, restructure, but we'll go back to, your speaker said it was the colonial system that was put in place. We are out of that for over 60 years. I think we should be able to fashion out our own policies, our own programs, to be able to utilize our resources very well and generate wealth from it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's go up the hill to Ibri. Hello, Na.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Is this Auntie Na?
No, this is not Auntie Na. This is Martin.
Ah, good to have you, Na.
Okay. So, am I on air?
Yes, you are. Please go ahead.
Okay, so thank you very much for the program. And I think your resource person has done a great job unpacking the issues and what the consequences of the various options could be. What I think is missing in the conversation is the fact that we haven't done a thorough analysis of the social impact of whatever options we will take. Already there's evidence that people are very much depressed, and this is affecting people's social life and how they function even in domestic spaces. We know, for instance, how COVID increased domestic violence and abuse, and many of those who suffered are women. And so I also want us to begin to go into the implications on people's personal and social life. I'm happy the resource person said the restructuring would not affect individuals. I can immediately think of what would think happen to retirees if individuals are going to be affected. Because we know very much that many people retire and put their gratuity or end of service benefits in some of these instruments. And so we really have to think very carefully about this. And finally, I also feel very concerned how we are very sensitive to external investors. And I see this trend running in many things we do as a nation. We care very much about foreigners. We care very much about how we treat them. And we care so little about ourselves. And so in the same way that we are sensitive to them and worry about how we don't want them to be put off, we want them to come back and reinvest in us. We think the moment they are affected. Is it then that because we think our locals will not listen They will not hold placards and go on they will not surround the nation with worship. We may want to careless with how we treat their investment, hard-earned investment. I don't want to believe it's how we want to approach it.
Right. A very important point, actually. Very important. Also, I think you're identifying the social impact of these things is also very important. Thank you, Na. Let's go to Westlands. Hello, Tom.
Hello.
Thanks for calling, Tom. Turn down the volume on your radio, or perhaps walk away from it so that we can hear you clearly.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect, Tom. Go ahead.
Yeah. What I want to know about the structuring of your investment is that, are they talking about the physical money you've invested or the interest you'll be getting on your bonds?
Yeah, that's actually one of the questions that was answered earlier. There are several options of how government can restructure debt, either by extending the payment period, by reducing the interest payments, or by taking a haircut on the capital itself. So there are options, and we've talked about the impact of each one, Tom. Thank you very much for calling. Let's go to Adenta. Oh, good old Benjamin. Hi, Benj. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Kojo. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Good to have you.
Yes, thank you very much. For me, I think that how are we supposed to get off these discussions about debt restructuring? Why wouldn't we get off debt totally? I remember 2016, the campaign, you and this guy has a name, Malik Dabu, were questioning the NDC government as to why they were borrowing. So why wouldn't we sustain that campaign even within this Akufo-Addo administration? So that moving forward, we don't even have to borrow. Look at yesterday, the customs guys were in your studio. Those guys rose to the ranks. They are very much aware of the smuggling and how this state is being duped by their own people. Can't you see how they were evasive, answering the questions, because smuggling is known. There is a lot of leakages. Why can't we block those loopholes instead of letting individuals be so much, resourced as in how much they are worth?
Have we lost Benjamin? Oh dear. Guys, we need to get Benjamin on the show. We need to get him on the show. Let's see if we can work that out. Let's take one more call. Yeboah is in Pram. Hi, Yeboah. Good morning.
Hello, Kojo. Good morning.
Good. What's up? What's on your mind?
For me, one thing keeps on puzzling my mind. How can it be that the same persons that got us into this mess are the same people sitting at the table trying to renegotiate, trying to restructure our debt, or trying to do this? For me, it's mind puzzling, right? I don't know why we don't embrace the culture of I've messed up, let me resign, let me leave that position for somebody else to come. Why don't we allow fresh brains to work at some of these situations? Because you see, it's absurdity when we keep doing the same things but expect different results. This is not the first IMF program we've gone through, but perhaps this is the first time we are going to, what's the word? What's the technical word you guys use? We are going to restructure our debt or whatever. Charlie, it's mere English. We need action. And these people who got us into this mess cannot be at the helm of affairs. It's simple. It's pretty simple. The finance ministry, everybody that's there, Charlie, just leave. Let's look for individuals. Yesterday I listened to Joy News Prime, even interviewed people. They have the minds, the brains. But you see, because we've made it political, people who are not willing to offer their services even to the country. Look at the mess we are in. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for calling. Thanks to all of you who called us this morning. Claude, Na, Tom, Benjamin, and Yeboah. Wow, very enlightening. And that last point there about resignation, for me, I think that's a great thing to wrap up on. Okay, let's be clear. We had a finance minister when we went into an IMF program. And it doesn't matter whether you blame him or not. The point is that he was in charge when we went into an IMF program. So at this point, if we're going to come out of it, is it not just logical that we find a different thinker, someone who thinks differently, to bring us out? One way of thinking took us in. Don't we need another way of thinking to come out? Isn't it just logical? Anyway, On behalf of the team, I want to say a big thank you to all of you for tuning in today. It's been an important conversation. It's the beginning of a bigger national conversation. Now that we are equipped with the information about debt restructuring, we can now have the debate whether it should be the way forward or not. We can now engage our government and tell them what we think is right for us. Let's do that. Let's be citizens, not spectators. Until tomorrow, have a wonderful day. Stay tuned to Joy FM for the duration. On behalf of everybody, thank you so much for listening. My name is Kojo Yankson, the Morning Man.
And my name is Mamavi Owusu-Aboagye. Winston Amoah was with us.